Thank you. This meeting of the Board of Water Resources is called to order. It is October 10th, 2024, just a little bit past 10, just barely past 10:30 a.m. And we are meeting from the George S. and Dolores Doré Eccles Wildlife Education Center in Farmington, Utah. We'll just go ahead and jump into the agenda, starting with introductions. My name is Juliette Tennert, and I represent Salt Lake and Tooele counties for the board and have the pleasure of chairing the board this year. We'll go down to the end and do board introductions with Dana.
I'm Dana Van Horn, and I'm with the Upper Colorado River District.
I'm Spencer Jones. I'm with the Colorado River District.
I'm Blaine Ipson with the Sevier River District.
Mike Davis with the Provo River District and Vice Chair.
I am Charles Holmgren, and I represent the Bear River Basin, the north end of the state.
Kyle Stevens, and I represent the Weber River District.
Great, thank you. We will note that board member Randy Crozier is excused from this meeting, and we expect to have board member Brian Steed join us when he is available via the virtual link. Director Hassenegger, will you please introduce yourself and your team?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Candace Hassenegger, Director at the Division of Water Resources, and with us today we have Joel Williams, Shalane DiBernardi, Marisa Egbert, Russell Hadley, Tom Cox, Bradley Caldwell, Ani Baynard, Ethan Stayner. We have Stephen Gregerson, Jonathan Jennings, Jessica Chun. We have our AG, Sarah Schechter here. Thanks, Sarah. And Shannon Clow is taking minutes. Thank you, Shannon. And then we have our amazing AV team, Paul Gedge and Seth Majors, and I appreciate all the work they do to make this happen for us.
Great. All right. Very good. Before we get into the agenda items, I would just like to remind the public that before every board meeting, we hold a public briefing meeting where we discuss the agenda in detail. And so that is always available via the regular links for this meeting. So live streaming and the recording is available in the same links that this meeting is shared to. And let's just go ahead. Oh, and then the other thing that I did want to ask Director Hassenegger or her team before we jumped into the agenda items is that I know that we do accept electronic comment for this meeting, and I'm wondering if we should expect any electronic comment for any of the agenda items.
No, Madam Chair, we do accept them, and we did not have any. And I forgot to mention one other person, Carmen McDonald's, also on our AV team back in Salt Lake and helping. Grateful for her helping to connect us. Thanks, Carmen.
Thank you, and thank you for making that important note. So first on the agenda, we need to approve the minutes. Everyone had those available in their packets and has had some time to review them. Are there any corrections or edits, or are we ready to approve them?
Madam Chair, I will move that we adopt the minutes as delivered to us.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, seconded by board member Davis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right, the minutes have been approved. And I will note, since we don't currently have board member Brian Steeds participating virtually, we will not do roll call votes, but if he does join us, or at the point that he does join us, we will. Okay, sounds good. Okay, let's go ahead and move into the feasibility reports. The first one is RE 482. That's the Davis and Weber Counties Canal Company. This is in Kyle Stevens area, and Ani Baynard is going to do the presentation for us. Welcome to Rick Smith as well.
So this is for Davis and Weber Counties Canal Company. Quick background of why this project is necessary. The Utah Department of Transportation is currently planning improvements to a stretch of 1800 North in Clinton City. The existing road will be widened and the asphalt replaced with concrete surface. The applicant has a secondary irrigation pipeline that was installed about 30 years ago, within the roadway alignment. As part of the UDOT project, the existing pipeline needs to be removed from the roadway and a new pipeline will be installed and relocated. You can see the pipeline's going to run from, or the existing pipeline runs from 2000 west to about 550 west, and that's just going to be moved out of the roadway and into the park strip. The applicant is requesting financial assistance from the board to replace approximately 8,200 feet of 12-inch secondary irrigation pipeline in conjunction with the UDOT project. The proposed pipeline will be relocated from within the road alignment to the park strip area, which will enable better accessibility for operation and maintenance. UDOT will hire the contractor and oversee the work, and the project will be put out to bid this fall and awarded in December, hopefully, of this year. It is anticipated that construction will begin in 2025 at some point. We are recommending the board authorize this project today and anticipate committal of funds in January. So staff recommends the board authorize 85% of the project cost up to $2,825,000 and that the project be purchased at 3.17% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $239,600. And that is staff's report.
Thank you, Ani. Rick Smith, General Manager, is here representing the project as the applicant. Do you have anything that you'd like to share with the board?
No, again, thank you for your consideration on this. We have several places where UDOT's impacting this, both on the canal and secondary system. So, and I have another meeting in a week or so for another phase of 2000 West. So
Okay.
more will be coming.
All right, thank you. Does the board have any questions for Ani or the applicant or any comments?
Madam Chair, the question came up earlier in our briefing meeting, and Charles, if you were going to make that or ask that question about what percentage of participation does UDOT participate in these projects?
It's usually a pretty small percentage. There's kind of a long history. So our canal or our secondary was put in there roughly 30 years ago with UDOT approvals and inspection. They've said if we're shallower than 3 feet, then it's 100% on us to replace things. But the majority is they impact, whatever they directly impact, they will reimburse. That makes sense. So part of our estimate is they actually have, they don't call it credits anymore, but they do apply a certain amount of funds for their direct impact. But the majority is to keep it out of the roadway in that park strip sidewalk area.
So that's a negotiated agreement between the parties as to what you and they consider as a direct impact.
Yeah, the design engineers go through and basically, all right, here's what we would have to move without us completely removing it.
Okay.
And based on that, they put a value to that. And so that's applied in that overall estimate.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? I think we're ready for a motion. then.
Okay, then Madam Chair, I'll make the motion, and that is, the motion would be the board authorize 85% of the project cost up to $2,825,000, and that the project be purchased at 3.17% interest over 25 years and, 15 years with annual payments of approximately $239,600.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Just clarification then, that is 15 years, the motion was, as opposed to the 25 years, is that correct?
I thought I corrected the motion in the process, but yes, 15 years.
All right. All right. The motion that we'll be voting on then does include that 15 years. And there's been discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. That motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. The next, we're going to go ahead and move on to committal of funds. So RE 478 is a Wellsville-Mendon Conservancy District. This is in Charles Holmgren's area, and Tom will be doing the presentation. Thanks, Tom. Okay.
If I might, Madam
Please.
Chair, just to let you know, we have our guests online, board members John Hardman, Curtis Ma, Kurt Henley, and then from Franson Civil Engineer Ben Sandberg and Chad Brown, I believe. That's great. They can clarify that.
Great. Thank you, Director. Right, go ahead.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the Wellsville-Mendon Conservancy District first came before the board in May for a project to install about 3.3 miles of pipeline to finish enclosing their upper canal. The project also will include a pump station that will be used to pressurize the pipeline and meters at all the turnouts. There you go, that's better. So between the authorization and today, there are three things that have kind of changed with the project. First of all, it was noticed that when the project was brought before the board, the cost of phase one of the project was not included in the cost estimate. So you look at the numbers now, that is included. So now we have an estimated project cost of about $4,852,000. The second thing is they were able to get a Water Smart grant of about $1.7 million. And the third thing is we had Zions Bank look at the economic analysis prior to authorization, and we noticed some things that we wanted Zions Bank to readdress, and they did that, which ultimately reduced the net project benefit, and that affects our repayment terms, the amount of annual payment. And so that was lowered, and based on those three things, the staff recommends the board commit 28.7% of the project cost up to $1,393,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1.38% interest over 27 years with annual payments of approximately $65,000, and that includes reserves. And that's staff's report.
Great. Thank you. Does the applicant have anything they'd like to share with the board before we go to questions? And thank you for joining us virtually, gentlemen. You may be on mute. And if you
We didn't have anything to add.
okay, thank you. All right. Any questions or comments on RE 478?
Madam Chair.
Please.
I do have a question, Tom. This is a 27-year commitment on payments. Could you explain to us what potentially happens if, since some of the value associated with determining what we would loan in the terms of this are determined by crop production, would you mind explaining to us what happens if some of the property is developed that's now producing crops, if it develops into residential housing or something to that matter, how does it affect or potentially affect or not affect anything that we have, we're approving today?
Sure, I'll give it a shot. The funding agreement that will be executed with, or I guess the bonding documents will state that it'll have a set amortization schedule. And so that's pretty much set. Normally, if their water changes from agriculture to municipal, the board would have the option to readdress the repayment things. But since this is a bond, it is pretty much set and cannot be changed. The bond would have to be reissued if any of their payment schedule was changed. So I guess we would hold that option open if down the line that property gets developed. And so I don't know if that covers your, it's a little bit different than our normal purchase agreements would say that, you know, the board can amend the purchase agreement for a different payments term, but this is a bond, so those are set and cannot be changed. But a new bond could be reissued if the conditions change too much. But ultimately, it's up to the district to come up with their assessments, their water rates to collect that money and to make that annual payment.
And
So
so, and they're the ones that actually apply for and receive the bond, correct?
Yes,
Conservation District.
we sell them a bond. So it's a little bit different than a
Okay.
normal agricultural project because they are a district, a governmental entity, and we bond with them because they cannot turn over their system and water rights to the board.
So as long as they're making the payments per the bond agreement,
It should be fine.
should be fine.
Right.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, just because maybe my understanding of this is maybe changing a little bit, so just to, if you would help to confirm my new understanding of this. So if this, if we approve the bond as or approve this as written, and the use of this land or use of this water changes to, for example, culinary, what I'm hearing is that 27 years would stick. We would
Right.
not renegotiate that or have the ability to renegotiate that.
Right, at the bond closing, they're set, and so it would have to take a reissuance of that bond to make any changes to that amortization schedule, that repayment schedule.
What would reissuance of the bond look like? Would that come at the board's request, or how does that happen?
Have the expert.
Thanks,
up there.
Tom. Yeah, I know this is a kind of unique situation, and gentlemen, it's not so much about your specific project as it is just how the process works for this type of instance that we're questioning this.
Madam Chair, if I might, and that was a great catch on Tom's part, because that is not what I said in the briefing meeting. But he's absolutely correct. With the bond, it is different. We don't have the same caveats. A reissuance of the bond would be a pretty complicated thing, and we probably wouldn't pursue that route unless we really felt it was absolutely necessary. I will say that one thing you may notice, you may not, a lot of times these districts come to us, they are water conservation districts. This is a conservancy district, and I think the unique distinction is and correct me, gentlemen, if I'm wrong, but they consider themselves an irrigation district. So even though it is a district that will bond with you, they provide irrigation water. That is what they do. And so unless their entire service area was suddenly developed into municipal property, I don't think we would look at reissuing a bond for this project. We would still consider funding through the irrigation process as we are now.
Okay, thank you, Tom and Shalene. Questions or comments?
Madam Chair, just to wander out into the weeds and comment on Board Member Davis's question. I had a discussion with my attorney, and it dealt with a canal company more than an irrigation district. And he said that in our situation, that shareholder who developed property or moved the water off the property would still be obligated to their share of the loan, and they could either buy it out as they left the canal company, or they could continue to make annual payments. So I've had that discussion, and like I say, I'm getting out in the weeds here, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you. All right. I don't think there's any further questions, so a motion would be in order.
Madam Chair, I will move the board commit 28.7% of the project cost up to $1,393,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1.38% interest over 27 years, with annual payments of approximately $65,000, including reserves.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. The motion that's been seconded, is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, that motion passes. Thank you. Moving
Thank
on.
you.
Thank you. Moving on to RE 481 Peterson Pipeline. This is in Kyle Stevens area, and Brad will be doing the presentation. And my understanding is that we don't have the applicant present. They're not required to be present for the committal offense. Is that correct? Thank you.
Correct. All right, Madam Chair and the board, the applicant is developing an additional culinary water source by constructing a well to ensure compliance with drinking water standards, and that portion will be funded by the applicant. And so the project authorized by the board involves the installation of approximately 1,200 feet of 8-inch PVC pipe to connect the well, as well as the construction of a dedicated well house. Maybe that's probably better. And so the staff recommends the board commit 85% of the project cost up to $882,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $35,300. And that is staff's report.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions or comments on this one? All right, we'd be looking for a motion if not.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would make that motion, and that is that the board commit 85% of the project cost up to $882,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $35,300.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. So we have a second to the motion. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair moves that that motion passes. Thank you. We've got a couple of special items. The first is RC 067 Twin Creeks Special Service District. This is a dam safety upgrade grant, and it's in Mike Davis's area, and Ethan will be doing the presentation.
Okay, Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. This one is for Twin Creeks Special Service District in relation to Jones Dam. We committed funds for this in May. This project is to update the dam to meet state minimum safety standards, and so that included improving the spillway, constructing a stability berm, and installing drains, and lining the outlet conduit, which Ben and I actually got to see, which was really cool. Glad to see part of it. And so I've been up there a few times, and they've been making great progress. They just need some additional funds to get over the top. And so we'll get to the cost share there. We're requesting an additional $352,000 in dam safety grant funds. And so the staff recommendation on this is that the staff recommends the board commit an additional $352,000 in dam safety grant funds, and that the contract be amended to state that the board will provide 80% of the project cost up to $2,192,000 as a dam safety grant. That is staff's report. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ethan. It's my understanding that Max Covey, General Manager, and Thane Clark, who's the engineer on this, are participating virtually. Gentlemen, do you have anything to share with the board before we go to questions?
Yes, I'll jump in. This is Max Covey. I just wanted to maybe give a brief understanding. So when the funds were initially committed, that committal was based off engineer's estimate. We had to move forward with the project with the timeline. So we submitted with the engineer's estimate, and then the bids came in, and it was a little higher than expected. So these additional funds aren't really because of overruns or necessarily project increases in the project. It's really just going back and addressing that the original bid from Whitaker Construction was a little over the engineer's estimate.
Thank you for providing that additional context. Does the board have any questions or comments? You're looking for a motion then?
Madam Chair, I move the board commit an additional $352,000 in dam safety grant funds and that the contract be amended to state the board will provide 80% of the project cost up to $2,192,000 as a dam safety grant.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Motion has been made and has been seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, chair rules that that motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to our next special item is RE 486 Sterling Irrigation Company. This is an authorization and committal of funds in Blaine Ibsen's area and will be presented today by Russell. I do believe that we have the applicant present online. It looks like I see Mark Otten, Secretary Garrick Wilden is the engineer, and is Travis Otten present? Oh, we see two of you. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. Go ahead, Russell.
Okay, the proposed project begins 1 mile east of Sterling Town in Sanpete County. The applicant supplies water to about 1,146 acres. The system uses both a ditch serving 36 acres and the pressurized mainline pipe, which serves 1,110 acres. Water from 6 Mile Creek is stored in Palisades Reservoir, and the reservoir is emptied by the end of every irrigation season. The mainline pipe is just under 2 miles long and is transite, which is an asbestos cement pipe that is nearly 50 years old. It is deteriorating and has had breaks that have been repaired several times, including one that flooded a home. Repairing the existing pipe involves cutting through the asbestos cement pipe, which creates asbestos dust, and that's a known health hazard. Additionally, the existing pipe was not adequately sized for the irrigation season, only allowing a flow of 14 CFS to be diverted. The purpose of the project is to replace about 4,300 feet of the transite pipe with a 28-inch HDPE pipeline. This will not completely replace the old transite pipe, but will address the section with the highest pressure and greatest risk. A future phase will complete the installation of the remaining pipeline. Engineering services are being provided by Jones & DeVille Engineering. Benefits of the project include that it will reduce water losses, reduce operation and maintenance costs, and flooding risk. Replacing the asbestos cement pipe will increase the safety and reduce potential health hazards due to repairs. The proposed pipe size will allow the applicant to divert the flow allotted by their water rights. The recommended cost sharing and repayment are as follows. Board of Water Resources providing $250,000. Sanpete Water Conservancy District providing a grant of $846,900, and the applicant will provide $43,100 for a total of $1,140,000 for the project. The grant from the Sanpete Water Conservancy District has been officially awarded. Staff recommends the board authorize and commit 21% of the project cost up to $250,000 and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $10,000. And that is staff's report.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to share anything with the board before we move to questions? Oh, I think you're on mute. Although we can't hear you. Let's see. Yeah, it still looks like we're having some technical difficulties.
Can you tell them turn on their microphone?
There you go.
We can hear you, Mark.
We
Yeah.
can hear Mark. Yeah.
You might have to turn it on your screen. I noticed this. It looks like it's on, but touch that red button and it'll should turn the microphone on. Anyway, I'm just happy. The comments I would have is I'm just happy that we're as far as we are. As Russell mentioned, this does not completely address our problem. I mean, it won't fix all of our problems, but it will definitely help. The transite, you know, it's rated for, like they told me, about 30 years, and we've surpassed that. So we're just tickled to death that if there's a way we can somehow eliminate that, we think that'll help. And then if we can upsize the pipe, which we're doing, I mean, we're just happy we're as far as we are.
Great. Thank you. Let's go ahead and go to questions from the board.
I just had a question relative to the fact that it's, transite asbestos issues. Will the pipe be left in the ground and the pipe put in its place, or will it be excavated out? And are there any costs associated with it because of the asbestos?
They're going to leave the pipe in the ground. I believe it's considered hazardous waste, so they would have to haul it off to somewhere special. So
yes, that is our plan. We do want to. The plan is to leave it in the ground. We're going to excavate right next to it, and they figured it would be safer where it is than if we haul it, cross country somewhere and then put it in a landfill. It's going to go back in the ground. So it was recommended we just leave it right where it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. I think we're ready for a motion then.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the board authorize and commit 21.9% of the project cost up to $250,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $10,000.
Great. Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Great. Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right. Chair that motion passes. Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll go ahead and move on to the last special item. That is RE 489, West Panguitch Irrigation Reservoir Company. This is an authorization and committal of funds. And of course, this is in Spencer Jones's area, and Tom will be doing the presentation. I do think that we have the applicant present today. Director, can you read off who's with us?
Yes, I believe online we have Alan Henry, the president, board members John Talbot, Greg Excel, Mac Hatch, and then Brandon Horrocks and RB&G Engineering. Matt is here. And Matt Call is also here from the Division of Water Rights Dam Safety Office. They're all in attendance virtually.
Great. Thank you. Great. Look to that presentation.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the West Panguitch Irrigation Company provides irrigation water to about 4,400 acres in and around the community of Panguitch. You can see on the map where Panguitch is. They store their water in Panguitch Lake, which is impounded by the Panguitch Lake Dam. You look at the map, there's a little inset that shows you the dam. The dam is about 28 feet high. It's mainly a rock masonry structure with a vertical upstream face. It was constructed in about the 1870s, and about 1940, concrete cap was placed on the top of the dam. And in the 1970s, the board provided funding for other improvements to the dam, which mainly consisted of an extended outlet and some rock fill down below the dam to kind of bolster the original rock masonry structure. Well, back in early April of this year, someone was at the dam and noticed a little bit of a issue. So there's the dam. You can see the concrete cap and the rock masonry structure, and there's water flowing through the rock masonry structure. That is not supposed to happen. So there was obviously major concern. So the residents of Panguitch were put on notice to be able to evacuate if needed. They did some emergency measures to reduce the pressure of the ice on the upstream part of the dam. They thought that the ice on the frozen reservoir was pushing against the dam, and that broke the rock masonry structure and actually caused part of the structure to tilt. So they cut some slots in the ice to relieve the pressure. They increased the releases from the dam as much as they could without causing flooding downstream until they had lowered the level of the reservoir. And they had also put some additional rock on the downstream part to bolster the part that was tipping. So just some pictures. This is the dam I taken about a month or so ago. You can see the upstream face. It's a vertical structure. You can see the concrete cap. Another part of the emergency measures was to, once the water level had been reduced, to cut that notch into the dam to enable it to pass the runoff more readily without having the water as high. The actual crest of the dam acted as the dam spillway. So when the reservoir filled, the water would spill over the top of that dam down onto the slope downstream, which had been grouted to act as the spillway. So that's a picture of, there's still cracking. So that's still a major issue. So something would have had to been done in order to store water in the reservoir anyway. The Division of Water Rights has put a storage restriction on the dam. The crest elevation is 8,206 feet in 8,208 feet in elevation. They cut the notches about 3 feet deep, 25 feet across, and the storage restriction limits them to storing water no higher than 8,202 feet, which should put it just below where that cracking is. And that's limiting to the storage capacity to about 66% of the total storage capacity of the reservoir. So that does impact the water users. Okay, that's just a kind of a close-up of the cut, where they cut the spillway. So you can see the makeup of the dam. You have the rock forming the upstream and the downstream face, and with just rocks placed in there and filled in with concrete. That's a picture of the downstream part. You can see where the outlet is towards the bottom left of the picture, towards the upper right. You can see some of the rock that was placed above the downstream structure to bolster that until they'd lowered the water level. So there were some engineering studies done on what to do with the situation, and it was ultimately determined that probably the best situation would be to build a whole new dam and abandon the upstream structure. So they're proposing to build a structure just downstream of the existing one. So in this photo, you can see the drill rig on the far side and the pink mark on this side. That's the projected alignment of the new dam. So you can see that it's right immediately downstream of the existing structure. So there's an estimated cost estimate of $5 million to build the new structure. It's proposed that Water Resources provide 85% of the project cost, up to $4,250,000. And the staff recommends that the board authorize and commit funds in this meeting and commit 85% of the project cost up to the $4,250,000, and the project be purchased at 1% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $164,700. And that's kind of the standard, the cost sharing and the payment period for funding coming from the C&D fund. So a couple things that should be noted, even though if the board decides to commit funds today, the funding agreement will not be executed until all of the project requirements are taken care of. And that will mainly include getting whatever permitting is needed for the project. The dam is located on Forest Service property. However, there is an existing easement with the Forest Service that covers the existing structure, but it's felt that it extends far enough downstream that the new structure would still fall within that easement. But the Forest Service is still requiring that some study be done to confirm that all the NEPA requirements are taken care of. Since new structure is going to be built on Panguitch Creek, stream alteration permit will be required, as well as a 401 or 404 permit from the Army Corps of Engineers, which is basically the federal version of the stream alteration permit. So those will all need to be taken care of, as well as the plans and specs will need to be approved by the Division of Water Rights, the dam safety section, before we will actually execute the funding agreement. So one more thing that probably ought to be mentioned is it's proposed that the existing dam crest and the new proposed dam crest be the same elevation. However, that should be dependent on the existing water rights and water determinations that they're in place. So if there is a limit on storage or a limit on the surface area of the reservoir or whatever it may be, those agreements need to be met. So I think, Madam Chair and members of the board, that's staff's report.
Thank you for that very thorough report. Let's go next to the applicant before we go to questions from the board. Does the applicant have any information they'd like to share with the board? I see that we have Denise Dastrup, and who is the secretary, and then it looks like Brandon Horrocks, engineer on this project. Anything to share with the board?
This is Alan Henry, president of the irrigation company.
Oh, great, thank you, Mr.
We're
Henry.
using Denise's computer, but
Great.
we just want to say thank you for all the help we've received. Everybody up in has been very helpful. It's been almost a full-time job trying to get all this information together. We appreciate our engineers. We appreciate the dam safety people. We're working hard to get all that information taken care of. Our goal is to build the dam this winter so that we do not have a possibility of flooding come the spring. So we're hoping to move forward as quickly as possible. And Brandon is on the line, and if there's any engineering technical questions, I'm sure he can answer those. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Does the board have any questions or comments?
Alan, this is Kyle Stevens. Good to hear from you.
Hey, Kyle.
A question relative to the easements and permits and the environmental issues you have to work through. Do you perceive any delayed issues in dealing with the Forest Service and working and the Army Corps of Engineers and working through those issues?
We've met with the Forest Service. We're in the existing easement of the old dam, which will help us, but they still are requiring some things. Our engineer just had a communication a couple days ago with them, and I think the main one there is an archaeological thing, but we are working on that very quickly. We are not, it'll depend on the stream alteration, whether they'll let it be approved on the state level or not. It's only 40, 50 feet from the existing dam where we're going to build the new one. So hopefully that is not something that really holds us up.
I will say that I do think that permitting process, particularly with the Corps of Engineers, is the critical path for the project. There's some environmental studies that will need to be done for that permit, and we are in process of procuring those right now. So we're expediting that work as much as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead. All right, any other questions or comments from the board? Be looking for a motion.
I, Madam Chair, would like to make a motion that the board authorize and commit 85% of the project costs up to $4,250,000, and that the project be purchased at 1% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $164,700.
Great, thank you.
I second the motion.
All right, thank you. A motion has been made and it's been seconded. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, I just want to say I'm completely in support of this project. My ancestors come from down there, have a long history with that. I've had, very interested in how this is going, and I hope it goes well. I'm completely supportive of this project with the caveat that the capacity cannot increase. And so where it is moving downstream, I request that the water rights, the review people make sure that the elevation of the dam corresponds so that the capacity does not increase on this. But I am completely supportive of this project. Needs to be done.
Thank you. Thank you for putting that point on record in the discussion. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to say, Spencer Jones here, that I totally agree with Blaine's comment there. So
Great. Thank you. All right. All in favor?
aye.
Okay. The chair rules that motion passes. Thank you. Okay. We'll just note that we have a couple of new applications. RE487 Greendale Canal Company in Daggett County and RE490 Clinton City in Davis. And then let's go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. We will hear from Jonathan Jennings with an update on cloud seeding. Thanks for joining us. And I feel like you should announce maybe even the more important news outside of cloud seeding. We have a new addition in Jonathan's family.
I became a father 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting.
Zoe Ruth is adorable.
Thank you. It gives you a new sense of purpose. That's what I've learned for sure.
Exactly. Very true. Saying if you can handle a newborn, you can handle a little bit of struggle with technology and PowerPoint coming up. It's nothing compared to the other.
Well, I'm going to give an update on the cloud seeding program, which has seen a lot of exciting new changes. I think with the state's support, we've been able to do some things that we've wished we'd been able to do for several years. The biggest thing is going to be looking at the expansion of some of our target areas, extending some of the seeding season, and then, of course, the new remote generator project that we're working on. So we're really excited, grateful for the state support and the support that the board has shown over the past 50 years. So I think we're getting close here. Is this good enough for government work?
It's PowerPoint presentation there, but not there.
Okay.
It's always fun.
How's this going to work? Because it's not going to change.
Sorry, Paul. I'm trying. Close that. We are going to start this. But I don't want to.
So Alt Tab maybe? Alt Tab. Should go back to here. Stop presenting, and then I should be able to share.
You have to start the PowerPoint.
Share that window.
There you go.
There we go.
Why did I come up here?
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Worthy of fun.
Yes, exactly. Could solve that. Could solve anything.
So, of course, the first question we always get is why exactly do we need to do cloud seeding? And, of course, the slides don't want to transfer, but I know how to get over that. So there we go. So snow water equivalent is how we measure our snowpack in the state of Utah. These are using SNOTEL sites, which measure the percent of normal snowfall. And on the left, that is our normal SWE for the state of Utah. Then on the right is for the Great Salt Lake Basin. And over the last 30 years, we've only fallen within 5% of normal once. So this is a boom or bust state when it comes to snowfall. Cloud seeding needs to take advantage of those wet years where the cloud resources are more available to help us get through those drought years. And with a better cloud seeding program, hopefully we see less of those drier years. So exactly how do we do cloud seeding in the state of Utah? And most of you are probably familiar with this, but we have a ground-based generator system, which relies on the flow of air over the terrain. Suspended under clouds, and we don't see any ice nucleation take place. So these ground-based generators send the seeding material up throughout the mountainous areas of the state, interact with the super cold water, turns into ice, and we get better droplet growth that way. 2 years ago, we started our first aerial program down in the St. George area. So instead of relying on that transport over the terrain, we're taking the seeding material directly to the cloud, and we're releasing the flares. They're just like a roadside flare that you'd see. They burn in place and send the material into the cloud right at the areas where we have the super cool liquid water in place. The aerial program is helpful for the days where we have the winter inversion, which traps the material to the lower elevations, and we don't see the dispersion that we would like to see. So we get above that inversion layer and send the material directly into the cloud. Last year, we seeded in St. George, and we also had a plane in the Logan area. We found out that there's some challenges with that in terms of too much icing. You don't want any icing on the aircraft. That could be problematic. But also we had visibility issues for landing or even taking off. So this year we're only bringing in one plane in the St. George area, and we're going to direct it to Logan when the conditions are perfect. And also we're going to look at seeding out of the vernal area as well. So one of the big discussions we always have is the seeding material. In the state of Utah, we use silver iodide, which structurally is very similar to an ice crystal. So that is able to trick that super cold water into thinking it's ice. And upon contact, you get freezing at around the -5 to -20 degrees Celsius level. But also the Emory Water Conservancy District, they use liquid propane seeding generators. And these are bursts of evaporative cooling. So anything from right around the freezing level to -40, everything turns into ice right then and there. And they have some data that suggests about an 8% increase. But there's a lot more research that needs to be done in this area. But we are we're positive that we're seeing the increases, but we just need to see a lot more data. So we're working with Emory on helping expand their programs. We offered them $100,000 to provide upgrades. A lot of their software was outdated. So the Emory program is building, and I think we're going to see a lot more out of them. Silver iodide is insoluble in water, which makes it great as a seeding agent because we're putting it into a super saturated environment, and we want it to stay in that solid form, but also for environmental impacts. It doesn't dissolve in water. In fact, the maximum concentration of silver iodide in water is only 0.984 micrograms per liter, which is about 6 times below the natural background levels that we already see, and also way below the levels that we need to see for impacts in drinking water, aquatic life, and terrestrial plants. So here's a map some of you might be familiar with. These are all the target areas and some of the generator locations that we have across the state of Utah. The exciting thing is this year we're going to have our first full target area in the Ogden area, extending back to like the Eden Pineview Reservoir area. So we're building that program up right now, and this is coming off a feasibility study that was conducted by the Utah Climate Center. So we're committing a lot of resources to that area, and then we're still evaluating the area near Provo. But again, I talked about extending the seasons. Northern Utah typically doesn't see the cloud seeding season start until December 1st, but we're going to start that on November 1st. And then that program usually ends on March 30th, and then the state's going to jump in and extend it through April. There's just too many opportunities being missed to not do that extension. The Six Creeks program, they start on November 15th, and they end on April 15th. We're going to extend those as well to make sure that we're getting a full November through April seeding season. We're still working on securing a sponsor to extend the Western Uintas program. Last year, the Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District provided the funding for that. We're working on getting their support once again. And then we always have been getting lower basin support, lower Colorado River basin support for extending the High Uintas, the Southern and Central program. And then this year, they're going to be fully funding the Book Cliffs program, which is just there to the east of Price. So here's a historical look at the funding. And so the gray is the state funding and the blue is local. And then in 2008 or 2007, we start to see some lower basin support. And of course, we saw a large increase in funding. So in 2023, we were just above $2 million of funding. And this past year, we almost reached $4 million of funding. That's going to probably top off somewhere around $5 to $5.5 million over these next 3 years as we continue our expansion. I want to make sure I give a shout out to the sponsors. These are all the different sponsors that have provided funding over the last year, and they all have committed to this upcoming season. I want to thank North America Weather Consultants. They're the contractor that conducts the cloud seeding operations. The Utah Climate Center has been great in terms of providing research and support. Campbell Scientific in Logan, they provided us some icing meters that are going to be very valuable for forecasting. And then Radiometrics, they're a Colorado-based company. We actually secured $800,000 from Southern Nevada Water Authority through the USBR grant. We purchased radiometers, which measure the liquid water in the cloud. Something we really haven't had in the state of Utah is this type of sensory. So we're really excited, both from an operations standpoint, but also from research and evaluations. So benefits, what do we get out of this? Over the last 20 years, it's averaged out to a 6 to 11% increase when you look at a target and control evaluation. Most cloud seeding projects boast about a 5 to 15% increase, so we're right within that threshold. Little conservative probably, but we want to take a more conservative approach and not oversell the program. Stream flow evaluation showing upwards to 200,000 acre feet of increased stream flow during any given season. And if you value that water about $100 per acre foot, you're looking at $20 million in economic return. We are working with a group out of Boulder, Colorado, the National Center for Atmospheric Research. We're going to be running some modeling statistics to look at how the seeding material interacts with the clouds, how much precipitation is increased, and what happens to that water when it hits the ground. So they have licensing to the WRF weather model and also the WRF hydro model. So we're going to be looking at how much exactly precipitation we're seeing increase from this program. The targeted control evaluation has been great, but the issue is everything is now a target area. We don't have many control areas left over. So it's a good problem to have, but in terms of evaluation, it's harder to conduct these evaluations. So in the short term, we're continuing our remote generator expansion. So these are remote generators that we don't need someone like Charles to go and turn on these generators. Instead, the meteorologist sitting in the house can turn the generators on when the conditions are right. But also there's a lot of times where the conditions are right at 2 in the morning. So we don't want to make those calls at 2 in the morning. Instead, we could just turn them on and do it all from in-house. The high resolution rapid refresh model that the Utah Climate Center is producing is going to help for operational forecasting, but also looking at the evaluations of these programs. We're working on environmental study where we're looking at the impacts of silver iodide on the ground here in Utah. The issue is there's been studies in the past, but there's been no studies in Utah. And we want to provide the people here in the state the confidence that silver iodide is having no negative impacts on the environment. The radiometer installation. So this is a picture at the Utah State University Equestrian Farm. We were able to get that radiometer installed about September 20th. And it was fantastic. We had great support from the Utah Climate Center, North America Weather Consultants, and Radiometrics, where we received training on how to install, operate, and maintain these radiometers. The icing rate meters, and then a big project I'm working on is the Gap Radar project. I'm working with the Colorado River Authority of Utah, the Utah Department of Transportation, and the Upper Colorado River Commission to try to bring additional radars to the state of Utah to help so many different areas, including cloud seeding. Longer term feasibility studies, we want to look at potential of convective cloud seeding. The feasibility study for the northern half of the state did not come back too great. It's just far too dry. But the southern half of the state, I think there's some opportunity there. The issue is going to be the suspension criteria because flooding occurs so easily in the southern half of the state. Looking at different seeding agents, so we're collaborating with the Idaho Department of Water Resources to investigate liquid propane further. And then the multi-year field research campaign where we're looking at the evaluations and optimizing these current programs, including the density of generator placement, aerosol research to make sure that the particle size and distributions coming out of our generators actually work for what we're seeing in the atmosphere here in the state of Utah. So a lot of exciting things going on. There's probably more on the dock, but these are the things I feel most comfortable talking about currently, but I entertain any questions or comments.
Thank you for that excellent presentation. And also I appreciate that in our board packets, we have a great summary as well. So thank you for that. Questions, comments? Go ahead.
Just a comment, Madam Chair. Jonathan came up to my farm when KSL Deseret News wanted to do a media event. And so I appreciated him coming up and seeing North American's cloud seeder on my farm, but
we'll get a remote out there here pretty soon.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly. That 2 a.m. calls now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. Any other questions, comments?
Madam Chair, I was
Yeah,
just going to
please.
say, unfortunately, Charles, it looks like you're getting worked out of a job.
Yeah.
Sounds like. I would just personally like to, and I'm just speaking for one person here at the board, but I would like to be able to see, more frequent updates on this. I think that this is really a great thing for the future of our states.
Great. Thank you. Great suggestion. We'll look to working with y'all for that. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
I echo the comment that Spencer made. I remember been on the board long enough to know that we were, at 250,000 to 350,000. And now we jump up to, $5 million. It'll be interesting to see what is the result of that investment. So thank you.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. And we'll look forward to seeing you again with another update. Appreciate it. Okay. We're getting towards the end of our meeting, but perhaps, what I was going to say, perhaps the most important part is our director's presentation. But before we go there, we do need to formally adopt our 2025 board meeting schedule. We had a bit of a discussion around this in the board meeting. These dates have been distributed to us. We've taken a look at them. There have been some conflicts noted by board members, but we did note that in every case, the majority of board members are able to attend the meetings that are listed in the schedule, which is right before the minutes in the board packet. And so unless there's any further questions, comments, or discussion, I would just be looking for a motion to adopt.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make that motion that we approve the 2025 board meeting schedule as published.
Great, thank you. I imagine Dana Van Horn will second. All right, excellent. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll look forward to those future board meetings. And now we will go to perhaps one of the most important items on our agenda, which is a report from our director, Candace Hassenjager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was emailing with Commissioner Yardley from Beaver County, and I was like, man, there's just doesn't ever feel like there's a slow time because and he's like, I totally agree. And I feel like I was about to say, man, it's a busy time, but I think I say that every single board meeting. But really excited and grateful to be here with all of you guys. I did want to recognize, and we did talk about this at our August board meeting, I believe, Marty Bushman from the AG's office, who's been our AG for the last 5 years and has worked for the AG's office for 33 years, is retiring. He unfortunately couldn't make it here today, but I did just want to recognize Marty. His last day is Friday, but really grateful for all the work that he's done for water resources and the Board of Water Resources over the last 5 years. Next week is interim week, and there are a couple of things that we will be presenting on. One is a water infrastructure funding study, and this is another study. I'm just going to fill you up with reading next week of all the things. But a water infrastructure funding study that's really looked at property taxes. So in 2023, if I'm remembering correctly, there was a bill, SB 34, that passed that requested this study be done. So we're coming to the final phases of this study, and we'll have a final document on Friday. And we will be presenting to the Legislative Water Development Commission next Thursday with our consultant LRB on that study. There are some interesting kind of findings, and real briefly, I'll just say one, and this is not a surprise to any of us, water is complicated, and so is the financing of water and how we fund water. The study does not recommend removing property taxes, and if there are any considerations to either changing property taxes or the amounts or anything like that, that they have kind of a long lead time. And there's a lot of considerations that need to be taken into account there. And also this study also noted that there's opportunities as far as tiered rate structures to further enhance water conservation and how we use water. So, and additional recommendations and things, but that's just a quick overview. The other presentation that we'll be giving is from the Water Development Coordinating Council, as I mentioned in our previous briefing meeting, that I chair, and John Mackey from the Division of Drinking or Water Quality. He is the co-chair there. We will be presenting on the status of funds of all the boards. So we're working to figure out how to make that as easy as possible on the eyes when you're staring at a bunch of numbers and tables and things. But really trying to pull out the important nuggets from that. So we will look forward to next week. We also discussed in our briefing meeting the work on HB 280. I would say that is keeping us and our staff busy. On October 1st, we had this status of funds report that was due, and we provided that to the legislature and the governor's office. On October 31st, we have an integration of existing funds study that is due. And as I mentioned, I'll provide a draft to you all next week. And then we get a march along developing relevant agency plans, working on a fee study, working on a unified water infrastructure plan, ranking and prioritization of the projects, and then finally updating a new state water plan. So we will be continue to be very busy over the next few years, but would really appreciate any feedback and comments you have on that existing funds report. We're also working on hiring, which is a great thing. We are looking to hire an engineer for our water optimization sections. We've conducted interviews and are making kind of some final decisions there. We're also looking to hire a state water plan manager. We did some initial interviews and are working on kind of making decisions there. And then we have a couple other positions that we're trying to get posted and out. So trying to add additional great people to our team. On the kind of conservation realm, and all of our efforts regarding our landscape incentives, we have about 70 cities and counties that are now eligible for the state incentives because they've adopted water efficiency standards, which is great. Wellsville City was the most recent one to adopt those ordinances. We've also, Heidi King in our office has been teaching local scape classes and recently taught our first one in Brigham City. In 2024, over 1.6 million square feet of grass was replaced with the help of state funds. And then we did hire 2 water conservation technicians who unfortunately weren't able to make it to this board meeting, but we hope to introduce you to have them introduced to you in December, but really to help us with the program, the landscaping incentive program, as well as other things that we can use their help on. We're working to get our final water conservation plans, which are due December 31st. We're trying to get out there into the community. We had a booth space out at the One Utah Summit, and we have some additional outreach events coming up at East Hills Community Resource Fair and at Indian Hills Elementary, which that is like a blast from the past because that was one of the places I went. So it's been a minute though.
That's great. That's great.
Utah Growing Water Smart Workshop. So we've really finished up almost phase 2. We conducted 4 multi-day facilitated workshops hosting 25 communities and 4 water districts. We were able to partner with 2 water districts during that. And 2 of those, the Utah State University and the Office of the Property Rights Ombudsman. So we're looking toward and planning for phase 3. And we're also doing a presentation at the American Planners Association. Watershed councils continue to go forward. We have completed creating all of the local watershed councils, and the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council is being met right now through the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council. And yeah, so those are going forward, and that's exciting to see how they're going to start working. I presented at the Jordan Valley Watershed Council and talked about the state water plan and their engagement in that as well. So looking forward to continue to work with them. As far as water for the general plan, which was a bill from a few years ago that required municipalities to include kind of this water and water preservation element into their general plan by 2025. The legislature also appropriated $500,000 for technical assistance. So we're working on getting those grants out now to help cities and to implement the water as part of the general plan. So that's going forward. And then some additional exciting news. We put in an application for the Bureau of Reclamation's snow forecasting grant, and we just recently found that we were awarded that grant. So we'll be doing an airborne snow observatory project in the Weber Basin in conjunction with Weber Basin Water Conservancy District and the Office of the Great Salt Lake Commissioner. So exciting to see how we might, if we're better informed on how the snow falls and how much falls over the whole watershed, how well does that improve our forecasting? So yeah, looking forward to that as well. And we're also working on a number of different legislative reports that we're required to do every year. So yeah, that's a little bit of all the things we got going on.
Thank you, Candace. Definitely like a little bit of all the things, and we appreciate the update. Questions or comments from the board? Charles?
Madam Chair, just one thing that Director Hassenegger didn't mention was she and staff and I attended a Bear River Commission tour first part of September. Looked at the Bear River Massacre site in Franklin County, Idaho, and Pacific Corp pump back project on the Oneida Dam. And so she gets around a lot.
That's right.
But additionally, for, outside that scope, Pacific Corp also had an additional tour of a pump back project at the Cutler Reservoir. And I cautioned them on how much difficulty this division went through on trying to make sure any dam project in Bear River development had to meet these strict standards that Pacific Corp better be careful with building dams high up on a mountain for their pump back project at Cutler. So those are just a couple of things that are going on the Bear River.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for adding to, again, all the things. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Maybe just, I would just ask, like, you remind us, like, we're kind of, again, you're juggling all these things in the day-to-day operations, plus all of these big initiatives that you're working on and planning and the reports that you're submitting. Can you just kind of tell us where we are in that legislative process? I mean, we are up and running, and you've kind of alluded to this in kind of the pieces, but I understand we're probably in like governor's budget timing right now. And maybe you could just remind us where we are.
That's a great
in the general process. And
Yeah.
the things that you're managing on top of everything else.
Yes. So, I mean, there's always feels like there's lots of processes. There was
Mhm.
the one legislative process, which, we're in interim. So this
Mhm.
is an opportunity for legislators to start working on bills, for agencies to kind of let them know of kind of where things that we could need support in as far as legislative changes, statute changes. So we have interim next week and then one more interim in November. And then really that kind of starts into the legislative world in January to start up the legislative 45-day session. They say it's a 45-day session, but it feels like it goes year round. But they pass bills in that 45-day session. And then the other kind of piece of that is the governor's office and all the work that they do. So we have submitted our building blocks. They've been ranked and prioritized by the department, and they've had their conversations with the governor's office and the lieutenant governor. And so now it's really, they're kind of crunching their numbers and trying to figure out and prioritizing and what is going to come out in the governor's budget, which we typically anticipate the beginning of December. So it's not too far away. So we will look forward to that. As you all know, once something lands in the governor's budget, we can openly talk about it and get that. So that's super helpful. And I'll just be really honest, and I know you guys have felt this probably as well. We are in kind of a crazy situation. We had 2 years of above average temperatures, above average snowpack, which is awesome. But then this summer it got hot, it got dry. We had a little bit of rain. But right now I think, and Jonathan can correct me, I think we're like 10 to 20 degrees above normal for this time of year, is what I was reading in the newspaper. So I'm feeling a little concerned about going into the winter of what this winter might hold. We all hope for an average or above average year, but it's a little concerning kind of where we're at and what will these dry conditions. We remember probably from 2020 when we had that really hot summer. We went into October and our soils were really dry. It really impacted our runoff efficiency for the next year. So, and I bring this up mainly because while we've had a couple of good years, water is always a concern in our water supply. And so I think trying to keep that top of mind for the governor and the legislature, that these are still outstanding issues. I've been involved in a couple of other work groups regarding kind of the governor's priorities for the next 4 years, and water is a part of it, which is a great thing. Another piece of it is affordable housing, which is a big issue in our state. And I keep trying to remind them that how we grow matters and sets our water use patterns for decades to come. So the goal is to build houses at the least cost available to us, that may not align with being the least water use available. So making sure that as we grow, that we're considering the water element and the finite resource that we have there is extremely important. So there's all these additional things that are ongoing on top of all the things that we've been asked to do by the legislature in the last number of years.
Thank you. And we're glad.
More than you
No, I think that's so helpful. And it's helpful to hear that you have a seat at that table in those discussions. And by you having a seat, we have a seat, and we're glad that the concerns of the part of the state that we represent are being shared and highlighted in those conversations. Sometimes they're not. So, all right. Any other questions or comments from the board? Well, it's been a great meeting. We had an awesome board tour yesterday. It's been a good year, and as Candace mentions, we've been managing a lot and have had, an amazing opportunity with the funding that we've been able to help manage. And just noting, as Candace notes, that the demand is not going away, though, and we appreciate everyone's support. We'll meet, our next meeting will be the last meeting of the year, December 11th. It's a Wednesday. I believe that will be also the holiday luncheon for our team, for the full staff. And so we'll look forward to seeing everyone on December 11th. And with that, be looking for that final motion. What do you think?
Motion, we adjourn.
All right. Hopefully there's a second somewhere. Mike Davis. All right. All in favor? All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.